always have branded yourself as the IAM girl, right? Now, why IAM girl? What does that actually mean, Pooja?
Yeah, again, very, very personal question, but glad you asked it because I've been asked about this a lot of time now. Um, I think I need to give you a small storyline here, and on how I eventually landed work on IAM, right? So, not that it was an intentional or a planned decision to work on IAM. I eventually landed into IAM the time when IAM was not even called IAM. So I was working in mainframes, moved to a company which hired me to work on IAM, and I find that shift the starting point of how I got into IAM. So mainframes to IAM, if I tell to people, they can't relate. I also cannot relate. But I think provisioning, deprovisioning stories were common those days. Mainframes were a system where you need to create accounts, delete accounts, provision accounts. So they needed somebody who understand mainframe and do the IAM processes there. So that's how I got started. So it was very manual, looked administrative. Um, but then I started working on these the tools which came out new that time. And I'm speaking like 20 years ago, right? And then these tools kind of helped automate some of these provisioning, deprovisioning rules. If you are onboarded in an HR system, can you get created access on day one? So it started doing that, and eventually I started finding my passion aligned with IAM, and long journey. As I was navigating in leadership roles, I was advised that if you stick to an IAM role, you may not become a CISO in future, right? And this is a real kind of advices, not from one person, but many people told me that eventually you need to be a CISO. So how can an IAM deep IAM person become a CISO? So I started navigating to few other areas. I started doing, of course, GRC is one of the favorite areas of mine also, because I am being the hot topic of GRC and auditors. I eventually have to play that role. But then I started off doing some part of DLP, some part of security, application security. But then it was always the IAM pulled me back, right? I was able to look at, when I look at the problem, right, whether it's fraud, compliance, security, it always traced back to identity. So I always landed back to identity, right? And that's why I realized that I didn't choose IAM, it was IAM who chose me, right? And over time, this IAM girl becomes a reflection of that thought, right? Someone who keeps coming back to identity as the core of trust, risk, and security. I think that title made sense. So it's just a reflection that I didn't choose IAM, IAM has chosen me.
See, and this is the actual place. I think what you started looking at identity the way, right? So I think that's the way. Now, fraud resilience compliance sounds powerful. Define in one sentence, if you had to put that in simple, fraud resilient compliance ability to prevent loss continuously. So, how do you look at this, Pooja?
So yeah, I think a good place to start the topic here, because I feel that uh, many of us realize that we are solving security and compliance issues, but what we need to also look at, what are the real risks here, right?
Hmm.
Now you asked me fraud resilient compliance. That's a heavy word, right?
Yeah.
What does it mean, right? So for me, it's again, look at the words. I will say that it's a ability to prevent is the key here. Prevent a loss while continuously proving that your defense and controls are working. So you see two flavors of it. One is your prevent, right? We were very good at detecting, but I'm talking prevention here. And then I'm also talking that you need to continuously tell that your controls are working. So how would you tell it? By continuously monitoring.